Okay, you guys. So, buckle in because what just happened at the BET Awards is not one of those little water cooler debates you scroll past in 10 seconds and forget by lunch. What just happened is the kind of moment that gets printed on the back of a textbook 50 years from now, and the reaction online is so upside down, so completely unglued, so disconnected from anything resembling reality, that it feels less like music criticism and more like a room full of grown adults trying to gaslight the entire internet in real time. Because Kendrick Lamar didn't just walk away with another trophy last night. Kendrick Lamar broke a record that has been sitting there quietly, untouched, since the BET Awards were invented as an institution. And instead of the culture pausing for 1 second to sit with a genuinely historic moment, half of the comment sections online decided the correct move was to spiral into full denial and pretend it never happened. So, peep this, because we are about to walk through exactly what went down, exactly why the meltdown is spreading faster than the news itself, exactly who embarrassed themselves the loudest trying to fight the result, and exactly why every single argument the haters are lobbing at the wall right now already fell apart under the weight of its own foolishness. This one is spicy, baby. And by the time we get to the end, you are going to see this entire mess in a whole new light. Now, let me set the table properly, because facts matter. And facts are the one thing you will not find anywhere in those angry posts that flooded timelines the second Kendrick Lamar's name got called. Because here is what actually happened. Kendrick Lamar just became the very first rapper in the entire history of the BET Awards to take home Best Male Hip-Hop Artist 5 years in a row. Not 4. 5 straight. Back to back to back to back to back. That streak stretches from 2022 all the way to 2026, and it pushes his overall total in that same category up to 8 wins. 8. In one single lane. No other rapper alive, no other rapper who ever lived, no name from any coast, any era, any label, is anywhere near that number. This is not a hot streak. This is not luck. This is not some popularity contest running out of control. This is the kind of documented, receipt-heavy dominance that historians are going to be dissecting long after the current news cycle burns itself out. And yet the moment the announcement dropped, the internet decided the appropriate reaction was to invent outrage out of thin air. Now, here is the argument the haters keep pushing, and I really want you to sit with it for a second, because it is genuinely embarrassing how weak it is. Their whole complaint boils down to this one line. How can Kendrick Lamar win Best Male Hip-Hop Artist in 2026 if he did not release a brand new album this year? On the surface, if you know nothing about music, nothing about culture, nothing about how art actually lives inside people, that might sound like a fair question. But the second you scratch the paint, the whole thing collapses in your hands. And the reason it collapses has a name. That name is GNX. And if somebody out there conveniently forgot how massive that project actually is, buckle up, because the receipts are ugly for the other side. GNX is still, right this moment as I am sitting here talking to you, the highest-selling hip-hop album of 2025, sitting well past 2 million equivalent units. 2 million. That is a number most rappers currently active in the industry will not sniff across their entire discography, let alone with one single album. And this was not some flash-in-the-pan release either. GNX took home Rap Album of the Year. GNX embedded itself into Super Bowl history through the same cultural wave. GNX kept generating headlines, kept generating debates, kept generating think pieces months and months after the promotional cycle technically closed. When an album is still moving units 12 months after release, still streaming, still being quoted in barber shops and comment sections, still being torn apart line by line on podcasts starving for content, that is not an album that quietly faded away. That is an album that permanently reshaped the landscape it dropped into. That is a project that flat out refuses to leave. So when the loudest voices online start screaming that Kendrick Lamar somehow did not earn this win because he did not put out something brand new this cycle, the honest response is embarrassingly simple. GNX never actually left. It has been camped out at the top of the mountain the whole time, quietly outperforming brand new albums that dropped with 3 times the marketing budget, 3 times the promo runs, and 1/10 of the staying power. That is not a loophole. That is not favoritism. That is exactly what this category was designed to measure in the first place. And here is the kicker: most of the outraged crowd apparently did not bother to check before hitting send on those angry tweets. Best Male Hip Hop Artist has never been framed as some kind of Album of the Year runner-up trophy. This award measures cultural impact. It measures influence. It measures relevance across an entire eligibility window. It counts features. It counts conversations. It counts longevity. If the whole industry is still chewing on your last body of work while newer artists throw everything they have at the wall trying to replace you and failing, that counts. That counts hard. Kendrick Lamar did not need to release a brand new album this year, because the album he already gave the world was still doing more cultural damage than almost anything releasing straight out of the box, period. Now, here is where the plot thickens, because this win did not just anger anonymous accounts firing off keyboard shots into the void. It set off fans of specific rival artists who dropped multiple projects during this exact eligibility window and still walked away empty-handed. One artist in particular, we are not going to overly name drop, released 3 separate albums during this window and still could not walk out of that room with the trophy. And listen, I understand why that stings. I really do. But here is the uncomfortable truth nobody on that side of the argument wants to hear out loud. Those 3 albums came out, generated maybe a week of noise apiece, and then quietly disappeared from the cultural conversation like they were never even there. Compare that footprint to the Iceman-adjacent chatter, the Super Bowl afterglow, the endless viral moments Kendrick Lamar keeps producing without even trying, and the gap in actual cultural weight becomes almost impossible to argue with a straight face. Quantity of releases has never automatically equaled quality of impact, and this year proved that harder than any year in recent memory. Now let me pivot to Iceman for 1 second, because that comparison keeps popping up in every single reply section, whether people want to admit it out loud or not. When you actually sit down and listen to that project all the way through, it does not land like its own fresh, independent statement. It lands like a response. Almost a direct sequel to the universe Kendrick Lamar already built with GNX. It is the kind of listen where you basically need the foundation of the earlier project just to fully understand what the follow-up is even reacting to. It is like walking into the final act of a cinematic universe without ever watching a single film that came before it. That alone tells you everything you need to know about who is setting the pace in this whole conversation, and who is playing catch-up 2 full calendar years behind schedule. But the real fireworks in this whole saga did not come from confused fans arguing metrics in the reply section. Oh no. The real fireworks came from one very specific, very familiar name, who has apparently built his entire online personality around being reflexively against Kendrick Lamar at every single opportunity that presents itself. That name is Isaac Hayes III. And baby, oh baby, did Isaac Hayes III embarrass himself this time. Now, Isaac Hayes III has spent what feels like actual calendar years positioning himself as some kind of full-time anti-Kendrick Lamar machine. Every single time Kendrick Lamar wins something, Isaac Hayes III suddenly appears in the timeline, hunting for a reason, any reason at all, to downplay the accomplishment before the crowd even finishes clapping. This time, his big argument was that a completely different artist, one who was not even seriously in the running for this specific category the way people were framing it, somehow deserved the trophy instead of Kendrick Lamar. Isaac Hayes III tried to dress the whole result up as some manufactured, industry-driven decision, tossing around phrases about award strikes and hidden agendas like he had personally cracked open a conspiracy nobody else in the culture was smart enough to spot. Except here is the problem. There was no conspiracy. There was just Kendrick Lamar doing exactly what Kendrick Lamar has been doing for years now, quietly outperforming the noise while everybody else scrambles to invent a narrative that makes the outcome feel less inevitable than it obviously was. Now let me name exactly what happened, because vague references do not do this level of foolishness the justice it deserves. Isaac Hayes III, a man whose entire online persona at this point revolves around finding a fresh reason to be furious every time Kendrick Lamar wins anything at all, decided the artist who should have taken home Best Male Hip Hop Artist instead was, and I want you to sit with this one, Don Toliver. Not J. Cole. Not Drake. Don Toliver. And to be very, very clear here, this is not a shot at Don Toliver. Don Toliver got yanked into this manufactured drama through absolutely no fault of his own. Don Toliver is talented. Don Toliver makes great music. Don Toliver has his own lane, his own audience, his own sound, and nobody serious out here is trying to disrespect the man as an artist. But trying to prop Don Toliver up as some kind of snub victim against Kendrick Lamar, when Don Toliver simply has not touched anywhere near the cultural heights Kendrick Lamar has hit over the last 2 years, especially coming off arguably the most dominant stretch any hip-hop artist has had in the entire last decade, is not a fair comparison. And everyone watching this play out in real time saw exactly what was actually happening. It did not read like genuine advocacy for Don Toliver. It read like someone trying to manufacture a moment by using another artist's name as a prop against Kendrick Lamar. And that distinction matters. It matters a lot. Now, what makes the criticism from Isaac Hayes III even more absurd is the actual logic underneath it. Kendrick Lamar did not win Album of the Year at this show. Kendrick Lamar won Best Male Hip-Hop Artist. Those are two entirely separate lanes, measuring two entirely separate things, and conflating them together is either a deliberate misunderstanding or a genuine failure to read the actual category description before hitting send on a furious post. The award recognizes cultural impact, staying power, and influence across the entire eligibility window. It does not exclusively recognize whoever managed to push out the newest project on the fastest timeline. If longevity and staying power are genuinely part of the equation, and they absolutely are, then an older album that refuses to lose relevance can very easily outweigh a brand new release that barely survives its own launch cycle. That is not favoritism. That is the category functioning exactly as designed. And here is something else worth pointing out, because honestly, it is one of the most entertaining parts of this entire circus. Watch how fast the goalposts move whenever Kendrick Lamar wins something. During award season earlier this year, the narrative from these exact same corners was that Kendrick Lamar was some kind of industry favorite riding a wave of favorable critics' votes. Now that Kendrick Lamar is dominating a fan-voted category built on genuine engagement and genuine staying power, suddenly the story flips into calling him an award darling instead. As if that is somehow supposed to be an insult, rather than just more proof that critics on that side cannot find consistent ground to stand on for more than 5 minutes at a time. You cannot lose an argument gracefully on a Monday, invent a brand new argument by Tuesday morning, and expect anyone actually paying attention to take you seriously by Wednesday. It does not work like that. Not in life. Not in music. Not anywhere. Now, there is a bigger picture buried inside all of this, and it is worth sitting with for a second. Online outrage and real-world cultural weight are not the same currency. They never have been. Loud opinions on social media do not automatically translate into real influence, real sales, or real staying power. What actually translates into the real world is artistry, consistency, and measurable impact. 3 things Kendrick Lamar has been stacking up relentlessly for years now, while a very loud portion of the internet spent all of its energy trying to manufacture reasons to be upset about it. And here is the funniest part of the whole thing. A lot of the people posting the angriest reactions about this specific win almost certainly did not bother to actually vote when the ballot was open. But somehow, when the results dropped, they found infinite energy to complain about the outcome. That pattern is not unique to hip-hop either. You see it in every public vote across every industry. People who show up loudly for the results after staying completely silent during the part that actually decided them. Now let me stay on Isaac Hayes III for one more beat, because this is genuinely not an isolated incident. This has to be somewhere around the 100th time Isaac Hayes III has found a way to slide a jab at Kendrick Lamar into a completely unrelated conversation. Every single time Kendrick Lamar accomplishes something, Isaac Hayes III shows up trying to reroute the credit somewhere else entirely. Propping up Drake. Propping up whoever happens to be nominated against Kendrick Lamar that particular year. Or inventing some kind of shadowy industry conspiracy to explain away a result that had absolutely nothing conspiratorial about it in the first place. At a certain point, the pattern stops looking like genuine music criticism and starts looking like a personality built entirely around being reflexively anti-Kendrick Lamar. Which honestly says a whole lot more about Isaac Hayes III as a public figure than it ever will about Kendrick Lamar as an artist. Now, even voices inside the wider hip-hop commentary space have started calling this pattern out publicly. Commentators like Jacob B. and Well, both of whom have TDE ties and have weighed in directly on this exact controversy, have made the point in blunt terms. Internet arguments carry no weight in the real world. Jacob B. specifically pointed out that BET itself had already flagged Kendrick Lamar as the artist to beat heading into this category, that certain rival fan bases had a very public meltdown over that framing in the comments section, and that Kendrick Lamar still walked away with the trophy regardless of how loud the pushback got. He drew a direct line back to the Grammy cycle too, reminding everyone that smear campaigns were already tried once before, hoping Kendrick Lamar would have a quiet night at the ceremony. Instead, Kendrick Lamar had the loudest night of his entire career and walked out as the most awarded rapper in Grammy history. The pattern keeps repeating because the formula behind it never actually changes. Consistent output. Minimal noise. And results that speak a whole lot louder than any tweet ever could. Now, there is also a serious conversation buried inside this whole controversy about what streaming numbers actually mean versus what they claim to represent. Streaming figures, sales counts, and chart positions can absolutely be inflated by passive listening. Meaning music playing in stores, in restaurants, at parties, in the background of somebody's morning routine, without them ever actively choosing to press play. That kind of exposure pads a number without reflecting a genuine, engaged fanbase behind it. Now compare that to an artist whose name trends organically without dropping a single new song. An artist whose concerts consistently sell out as one of the biggest touring draws in the entire genre. One of those patterns reflects passive exposure. The other reflects an actual, engaged, dedicated audience showing up every single time it counts. And right now, by nearly every measurable standard beyond raw, inflated streaming counts, Kendrick Lamar's fanbase is doing all of the heavy lifting in the second category, while certain other camps are quietly leaning on the first. Now look at what is actually dominating timelines in real time. A completely unrelated controversy involving another veteran artist calling Kendrick Lamar's skills into question instantly became the single biggest topic in hip-hop within hours. Generating more clips, more reaction videos, more genuine cultural buzz than most full album rollouts managed to produce during an entire promotional cycle. That is the kind of gravitational pull you simply cannot manufacture through marketing budgets or industry favors. That happens because the culture is still actively paying attention to every single move connected to the man's name. Whether he is the one making noise himself, or simply the subject other people cannot stop talking about. Voices inside Kendrick Lamar's own camp have weighed in on this whole saga too. And their message has been refreshingly blunt. The internet's opinions and the real world's outcomes are not the same currency. Article after article, headline after headline, going back through award season after award season, has documented the exact same repeating pattern. Rival fan bases work themselves into a full frenzy trying to manufacture doubt, trying to talk him down before the results even come in, and every single time, he walks away with the trophy anyway. Loudest night of the entire ceremony included. At some point, you have to accept that opinions without receipts do not actually carry any real weight. What carries weight is showing up, putting the work in quietly, and letting the actual output speak for itself. That is precisely the blueprint Kendrick Lamar has been following for years now, while everyone else keeps searching for a brand new angle to attack from. Now, it is also worth mentioning that this entire firestorm did not stay confined to just one commentator either. Once the win was officially announced, it did not take long before rival fan bases connected to both Drake and J. Cole started flooding comment sections and timelines with their own flavor of outrage. Essentially arguing that because their personal favorites walked away empty-handed, that somehow invalidated Kendrick Lamar's win. But here is the thing that gets lost every single time this argument resurfaces. This is not a Drake versus Kendrick scoreboard. It never has been. You cannot tally up a win or a loss for either artist through tweets, through reply section arguments, or through manufactured outrage cycles that dissolve within 48 hours of going viral. The only scoreboard that has ever mattered in this entire rivalry is the one built from actual cultural impact. Actual sales. Actual streaming behavior from real, engaged listeners. And actual touring numbers. And on every single one of those fronts, Kendrick Lamar keeps separating himself from the pack in ways that are almost impossible to argue against with a straight face. So, where does all of this leave the discourse right now? It leaves it exactly where it always ends up whenever this specific debate resurfaces. A 5-year unbeaten streak. 8 total trophies in one single category. A commercial monster of an album that refuses to stop performing more than a full year after release. A fan base that shows up to vote, shows up to stream, shows up to fill arenas without needing a fresh single to justify the loyalty. And on the other side, a rotating cast of critics who keep changing their argument every single time the previous one collapses under basic scrutiny. Plus Isaac Hayes III, who somehow managed to embarrass himself yet again, this time trying to sell a snub narrative that never actually existed in the first place. None of this means the artists caught in the crossfire of this manufactured drama deserve any disrespect either. That is not what this is about. This is not about tearing anyone else down. This is about recognizing when a genuinely historic milestone is happening in real time, and refusing to let manufactured outrage rewrite what actually took place in front of the whole world. 5 years in a row has never happened before in this category. 8 wins total has never happened before in this category. And whether the loudest corners of the internet want to accept it or not, the numbers, the streak, and the staying power all agree on the exact same conclusion. Now, here is where I want you guys to get involved, because this comments section is about to be an absolute war zone regardless of which side you land on. Do you think this 5-year streak is officially the most disrespected historic achievement in hip-hop award history? Do you think the criteria behind this award actually makes sense, or do you feel like artists should be required to drop something brand new every single year just to even qualify? And most importantly, do you think Isaac Hayes III finally learned his lesson after this latest attempt blew up in his face in front of everybody watching, or is he already in the lab cooking up his next manufactured controversy as we speak? Y'all sound off in the comments below, because I guarantee that section is going to be absolute chaos within the hour. If this breakdown actually opened your eyes to just how deep this rivalry runs, and how manufactured most of the online outrage really is, do me a favor and smash that like button before you go anywhere else. It genuinely helps push videos like this one out to more people who need to see exactly how these narratives get built up and torn down in real time. And if you have not already, go ahead and subscribe, because we are covering every single angle of this unfolding story as new information keeps dropping. Trust me. This is nowhere close to being over. Turn on notifications too, because the next update in this saga is going to hit even harder than this one did, and you do not want to be the last person finding out. When all the smoke finally clears, when you strip away every angry tweet, every manufactured hot take, and every Isaac Hayes III attempt to force a narrative that does not actually hold up under pressure, you are left with one simple, undeniable truth. Kendrick Lamar did not need a brand new album to prove that he still runs this category, this conversation, and this entire era of hip-hop. The streak speaks for itself. The sales speak for themselves. And the culture, whether it wants to admit it out loud or not, has already made its decision. 5 years running. 8 trophies deep. And judging by everything we just broke down together in this video, this conversation is nowhere near finished, because the moment the next ceremony rolls back around, you already know exactly whose name is going to be called first. That's all I have for you, and I'll talk to you later.